You know, when we think of MK Gandhi, we usually picture the icon of peace, right? But behind that image was a master strategist, a psychologist who really got the masses, and the architect of a deep, powerful philosophy for change. In this explainer, we're going to unpack that very philosophy.
And we're going to start with a quote that might just make you do a double take. From the world's most famous champion of nonviolence, a vision of ordered anarchy. I mean, that sounds like a total contradiction, doesn't it?
Okay, so let's get into it. To really understand this quote, we need to understand the core operating system behind the man, the thinking that turned a brilliant strategist into a Mahatma, a great soul.
To start, it's actually pretty helpful to see Gandhi through other people's eyes. The scholar Humayun Kabir, for example, he argued that Gandhi wasn't a philosopher in some stuffy academic sense. No, he was a strategist. He was a psychologist with this incredible gut feeling for the masses, and that is what made him so incredibly powerful.
What's funny is, Gandhi himself would have told you there's no such thing as Gandhiism. He just saw himself as a simple guy searching for truth. But when you look at all his work, it forms this amazingly coherent and powerful system. And it's all built layer by layer on just a few core ideas.
So, to get a handle on Gandhi's entire worldview, his politics, his economics, his vision for society, you have to start at the very beginning. It all comes down to one single, powerful concept: Ahimsa. This is the bedrock. Everything else is built on top of this.
For Gandhi, Ahimsa, or nonviolence, was basically his religion. It wasn't just a clever tactic you use when you don't have an army. For him, it was the essential path to reaching what he called truth, or God. He was absolutely convinced that pure ends, like freedom and justice, could only ever be achieved through pure means.
But here's where he took it to a whole other level. Gandhi argued that ahimsa isn't just the negative act of not hurting someone. It's a positive, active feeling of love and connection for all living things, people, animals, the whole planet. It's a huge shift from just a rule you follow to a profound way of living.
All right, so let's add the next layer. If ahimsa is the foundational belief, then Satyagraha is the engine of change that's built right on top of it. This is ahimsa in action.
The word Satyagraha literally breaks down to insistence on truth. In Gandhi's eyes, a movement like the fight for Indian independence wasn't just politics, it was a cosmic struggle between good and evil. And the goal of Satyagraha isn't to crush your opponent, but to actually convert them by appealing to their better nature.
And this brings us to a point Gandhi was really passionate about. Satyagraha is not the same as passive resistance. See, passive resistance is a tool of the weak. You don't use violence because you know you can't win. But Satyagraha, that's a weapon of the strong. It requires an active love for your opponent where you're fighting the evil idea, not the evil person.
So we've got our foundation, Ahimsa, and we've got our method, Satyagraha. But what was it all for? What was the ultimate goal? The answer is this really radical and all-encompassing idea of freedom called Swaraj.
Swaraj means way, way more than just kicking the British out. Drawing from ancient Indian philosophy, Gandhi defined it as self-rule or self-control. His argument was that a nation can't ever be truly free until its people learn to control their own desires, until they become masters of themselves first.
He saw Swaraj as having 4 pillars that all had to work together. Political freedom meant power starting from the bottom up, with the individual in the village. Economic freedom meant dignified work for everyone, production by the masses, not mass production that makes people obsolete. And of course, it demanded social and cultural freedom from all the evils within society itself.
And this quote just perfectly nails his idea of cultural Swaraj. Basically, be rooted in who you are, love your own culture, but keep the windows open to all the good ideas floating around the world. Be so strong in your own identity that you can welcome others without getting swept away by them.
Okay, this brings us to the very top of Gandhi's vision. This is where the individual goal of self-rule, Swaraj, blows up into a model for the whole of society. He called it Sarvodaya.
Sarvodaya pretty much means the welfare of all. He was inspired by an English writer named John Ruskin, and this became Gandhi's version of socialism. The core idea is that a society is only as healthy as its most vulnerable person. So the goal has to be uplifting everyone, especially the person at the very back of the line. It's about an equality of dignity for all.
So how do you pull this off without a violent revolution? Well, Gandhi had this incredibly radical idea called trusteeship. He basically proposed that the wealthy should voluntarily change how they think.
They should see themselves not as owners of all their wealth, but as trustees of it for society. They take what they need, and the rest is used for the common good. It's a way to fix class conflict through conscience, not through force.
A philosophy of nonviolence, self-control, trusteeship. I know, it sounds pretty idealistic, right? Maybe something from a completely different era. So the big question is, why does this framework, dreamed up a century ago, still matter so much in our crazy modern world? Well, it's because the ideas we've just been talking about map directly onto some of the biggest challenges we have right now. From the civil rights movement of Martin Luther King Jr., all the way to modern pro-democracy protests and today's climate activism. His thoughts on nonviolent resistance, social justice, and his critique of endless consumerism are, frankly, more relevant than ever.
You see, in the end, Gandhi's philosophy wasn't just a roadmap for India's independence. It's a timeless toolkit for anyone, anywhere who wants to build a more just, sustainable, and peaceful world. The questions he was asking, well, they're the same questions we are still struggling with today.
And maybe the scholar Noam Chomsky put it best. The reason Gandhi's ideas last is because they tap into something universal, that deep human desire we all have for dignity, for justice, and for a better way to live with each other. It's a blueprint that just keeps on inspiring.